Okay, let's unpack this. We are diving into a stack of sources today that, honestly, they read less like dry historical reports and more like a collection of suppressed nightmares.
That's a good way to put it. These are the really chilling UFO stories, the bizarre ones, the terrifying accounts that seem to haunt official records but also fuel, decades of conspiracy theories.
Right. And what we're seeing here, it feels like a progression, doesn't it?
It really does. This material, it tracks these encounters from structured military events, aerial duels confirmed by pilots, all the way through to alleged presidential secrets, horrifying ground sieges.
And even secret treaties, deep underground battles. It gets wild.
It absolutely does. Non-human intelligence, the whole 9 yards, according to these sources.
So our mission today, for you listening, is to be your guide through this really high-stakes, kind of hidden history. We need to pull out the facts, yes, the concrete stuff.
The sensory details, too, those are crucial. What did people see, hear, feel?
Exactly. And the core claims from these incidents. But maybe more importantly, we need to look at the pattern. Why were these incidents, even ones with trained witnesses, physical evidence? Why were they dismissed so quickly?
And often with explanations that seem, well, let's just say, highly implausible.
Yeah.
Weather balloons dogfighting, barn owls causing toxic gas symptoms.
Right. So we explore that pattern of denial and what it might mean for how we understand, reality itself.
And just a heads up, the material is intense. It's visceral. We're not going to shy away from that. As we go through this, listen for those specific details that just stick in your mind.
Yeah, like the G-force limits Gorman hit.
Yeah.
Or those grid-like burns on Mahalik, that weird metallic ping sound.
Those are the things that really defy easy dismissal. They're the pressure points, the inconsistencies that, interestingly, Congress seems to be finally starting to address now.
Okay, so let's start at the top. Highest level of credibility you can imagine, really? A trained military pilot engaging an unknown craft. This is the George Foreman dogfight.
October 1948, Fargo, North Dakota. And like you said, this isn't just, someone seeing a light in the distance.
No, this is George Gorman, a seasoned WWII P-51 Mustang pilot.
Yeah.
A member of the North Dakota National Guard. He knew aircraft.
Absolutely. He'd finished his training flight. It was a clear night, around 8:45 p.m., 45 hours, and he decided to get a little extra flying time in. Just cruising.
So he checks in with the control tower in Fargo.
Yeah.
They tell him, there's one other plane nearby, a small civilian Piper Cub. That's it.
Right. But then Gorman looks out and he sees it. A distinct, bright, white light over at his 3 o'clock position.
And the tower. They can see the Piper Cub on their scope, but they don't see this light Gorman's talking about.
That's key right away. It's visible to the pilot, but not showing up on ground radar at that point. So Gorman, being a pilot, thinks, okay, what is that? He flies closer, gets within about 1,000 yards, close enough to really see it.
And here's another piece of corroboration. The pilot of that Piper Cub, Dr. Cannon, and his passengers, they see the exact same weird light.
Right. And Gorman described it very precisely. He said it was small, maybe 6 to 8 feet across. Clear white light. And crucially, he said it had no fuzz at the edges.
Not blurry like a star or a distant city light. Sharp. Distinct.
Exactly. And initially it was blinking, but then suddenly it just went steady, and that's when the chase started.
The object just whips into a sharp left bank.
Oh.
A move that Gorman noted seemed impossibly fast, defying inertia somehow.
And Gorman, in his P-51 Mustang, this is a powerful WWII fighter plane capable of high speeds and combat maneuvers. He tries to follow it. For nearly 30 minutes, they're in this high-speed chase, pushing over 400 miles per hour.
We really need to pause here and think about the physics involved.
Yeah.
A P-51 is powerful, but it's still a conventional airplane. It has limits.
Absolutely. When this object pulled off an extreme vertical climb, just shot straight up, Gorman pushed his Mustang to follow. What happened?
His plane stalled out at 13,000 feet. It just couldn't match that climb.
But even more telling than the plane's limits were Gorman's own. Yes. When investigators checked Gorman's Mustang after he landed, the Geiger counter went off the charts near the plane. High radiation readings.
Okay, so physical evidence. What was the Air Force explanation for that?
Officially, a result of high-altitude flying, which, okay, technically true, flying high exposes you to more radiation, but in the context of chasing an unknown object that performed impossible maneuvers, it feels like a deliberate sidestep.
Yeah, completely dismisses the context. So what was the final verdict from Project Blue Book? After 27 minutes of a high-G dogfight that made a veteran pilot black out.
They concluded he was chasing a lighted weather balloon.
A weather balloon.
A weather balloon that had supposedly been released about 10 minutes before the sighting started. They even linked it to Operation Mogul, which you might recognize as the same program used to explain away Roswell.
It's almost insulting, isn't it? To tell a combat pilot he spent half an hour risking his life, pushing his plane and body to the limit, chasing a balloon.
Gorman never bought it. He didn't speak publicly about it much, but he told friends he was never convinced. The evidence points one way, an object defying known physics, and the official conclusion points completely the other way, towards a rubber balloon.
Okay, so from an aerial duel leaving radiation traces, let's shift to a ground encounter. One that left literal physical scars. We're going to Falcon Lake, Manitoba, Canada, May 1967.
Another case with a credible witness in his element, Stefan Michalek. He was an amateur geologist out in the wilderness prospecting for silver and quartz. Middle of the day, around noon.
And he sees when?
Two metallic, disc-shaped objects descending. One lands not too far from him. It gave off a low humming sound, he said, and a reddish glow.
The sensory details here are just, wow. Michalek gets closer. He sees this seamless metallic surface. And then there's the smell.
A strong, really unpleasant sulfuric smell, like rotten eggs, but intense. It screams unnaturally,
Alien chemistry.
And then a panel slides open on this thing. He sees bright purple light coming from inside, and he hears voices. Muffled voices, yeah. Unintelligible. He couldn't make out words. Just the sound of speech, sort of.
So what does he do? He reaches out.
He does. He reaches out, touches the craft surface. Big mistake. The heat instantly burns through his glove.
Ouch. But it gets worse.
Oh, yeah. Suddenly, this vent-like opening appears on the craft, and it blasts him with a burst of scorching hot gas, knocks him right off his feet.
His clothes caught fire.
His shirt and hat, yeah. He managed to put them out, but the damage was done. He had severe burns on his chest. And here's the detail that just blows my mind.
The grid pattern.
The grid pattern. The burns weren't just random splotches. They were in a precise, unusual, grid-like pattern that perfectly matched the shape of that vent opening he described on the craft. That's not accidental injury. That's specific targeted trauma from the object itself.
And the after effects were serious. He wasn't just burned.
No, not at all. He lost weight, suffered from nausea, dizziness, even temporary hair loss. These are signs of significant physical trauma, possibly radiation exposure or chemical effects, debilitating symptoms.
Did the authorities take this seriously? I mean, burns, radiation symptoms?
Initially, yes. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP, and the Canadian military investigated. They searched the site weeks later.
And found?
They found radiation levels near the landing spot were still slightly higher than the normal background levels, and they found traces of radioactive material on Michalek's burned clothing.
So, physical evidence again. Radiation detected at the site and on the victim's clothes. Matching burns, credible witness.
Exactly. So the pattern we see emerging in this first part is stark. You have highly credible witnesses, trained pilots, experienced outdoorsmen. You have impossible physics being observed. You have physical evidence, radiation traces, unique burn patterns, the highest forms of evidence you could hope for.
And yet, the official narrative, even in the Canadian case, kind of struggles. They lean towards maybe it was an experimental aircraft, but they shy away from the truly anomalous aspects.
Right. It shows the systemic preference for dismissal, or at least downplaying, even when the evidence is literally starring the witness. It prioritizes maintaining the status quo over documenting the unexplained.
Okay, let's take a breath here, because we're shifting gears. We're moving away from the more, let's say, structured world of military reports and geological surveys.
Yeah, this is where it gets primal. The psychological impact ramps up. It's less about scientific anomaly and more about sheer, terrifying horror.
We're heading into the deep, dark woods of Appalachia, isolated communities, and the encounters here feel less like observations and more like invasions.
We almost need to tell those stories you whisper around a campfire, Because that's the feeling you get from the sources. Raw, visceral fear, shared community terror.
Okay, let's start with the Flatwoods Monster, West Virginia, September 12th, 1952. Picture this. Dusk is falling. A group of local boys, Eddie and Freddie May, are among them. They see this bright light streak across the sky.
And it doesn't just disappear. It looks like it crashes. Slams into a hillside near their town, Flatwoods.
They run home, obviously panicked. Their mother, Kathleen May, she grabs a shotgun. You would too, right?
Absolutely. And she, along with a local National Guardsman named Eugene Lemon and the boys, they head up the hill, towards the crash site, into the darkening woods.
I mean, just pause there. The dread. Walking towards an unknown crash, armed with just a shotgun and a flashlight. The air getting thick.
When they get near the top of the ridge, they see it. A pulsing red light. Okay, weird, but maybe explainable. Then Lemon points his flashlight towards it.
And everything changes. It's not just a light. Standing there is a creature, 10 feet tall.
Not human, not animal, just this massive silent thing.
The descriptions are what make your skin crawl. The head shaped like a spade, like the ace of spades. Dark, flat. It looked like it was wearing some kind of dark metallic dress or tunic.
And the hands, twisted claws. Its eyes glowed this eerie, sickening orange. And the way it moved.
It didn't walk, it levitated. It just glided above the ground.
And then the atmosphere itself turns hostile. The creature lets out this low, guttural hiss, and it starts gliding towards them.
And this foul mist just suddenly hangs in the air, makes them sick, choke. They turn and run, utterly terrified, vomiting.
And it wasn't just the immediate fear. Some of them had lingering physical symptoms for days. Throat irritation, continued nausea, vomiting, which, as researchers later pointed out, are classic signs of exposure to some kind of toxic gas or chemical agent.
Okay, so terrifying creature, toxic mist, physical symptoms. What's the official skeptical explanation for this 10-foot, spade-headed, metal-clad, levitating, hissing, gas-emitting thing?
Get ready for this. Investigator Joel Nickel looked into it. He agreed the initial light was probably a meteor. It was seen across 3 states. That checks out. But the monster.
Yeah.
He concluded that the description, the movement, the sounds, they were all consistent with the startled barn owl.
A barn owl.
Yes, perched on a high tree limb. He argued the foliage below the owl created the illusion of the lower body, the dress, making it seem 10 feet tall. The glowing eyes, owl eyes reflecting the flashlight. The hissing, owl's hiss. The claws, just the owl's talons gripping the branch.
So a National Guardsman with combat experience, a mother protecting her kids with a shotgun, several terrified boys. They all collectively mistook a common bird for a 10-foot metallic monster that made them physically ill with a strange mist.
That's the counter-narrative you have to ask yourself, which requires a greater leap of faith. Believing the witnesses' terrifying account, or believing they all misidentified a startled owl in such a specific, bizarre, and physically consequential way.
The skepticism almost seems more fantastical than the original story. Okay, let's move just 3 years forward, 1955, and south a bit to Kentucky. The Hopkinsville Goblin Siege.
If Flatwoods was a sudden shock of terror, Hopkinsville was prolonged psychological torture. This wasn't a fleeting glimpse. This was, according to the families, nearly 4 hours of battle.
2 families involved.
Yeah.
11 people total, crammed into this isolated farmhouse out in the country. It all starts subtly. Billy Ray Taylor sees a strange light over the trees. Rainbow colors, he said. Like liquid fire. It vanishes. Okay, weird, but maybe nothing.
Until the family dog goes absolutely nuts, barking frantically. Then it suddenly whimpers, tucks tail, and hides under the house. And it refuses to come out until morning. Dogs know things, right? That's instant bad vibes.
That's the classic horror movie trope for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
So the men, Lucky Sutton and Billy Ray Taylor, they grab guns, a pistol and a shotgun. They step outside to see what spooked the dog.
And they see them. Small figures. Maybe 3-4 feet tall, glowing with this eerie greenish light, humanoid shapes walking towards the house.
So naturally they shoot.
They do. And here's where the real horror kicks in. The bullets hit the creature, you hear the impact, but it doesn't cry out, it doesn't bleed, it just flips over like you kicked a tin can. Then it scrambles up and scurries back into the darkness.
No sound, just the impact.
Just the impact, and that's when they realize they're in deep trouble. These things aren't vulnerable in the way they expected.
And it wasn't just one. They kept coming.
Oh, it turned into a full-blown siege. A creature pops up at a side window, peering in. Then, and this detail is just chilling when it appears on the roof, reaches down and actually grabs Lucky Sutton's hair from above.
What? She shot it.
He did, shot it point blank. And again, the reaction's bizarre. The figure, described as being clad in something silvery that glowed, just sort of floats down off the roof, makes a distinct metallic ping sound as it disappears.
The ping, like hitting metal.
Exactly, not the thud of hitting flesh and bones, something hard. Armored, maybe?
So the family figures out these things don't like bright lights.
Right, so they turn on every single light in the house, porch lights, indoor lights, everything, trying to create a safe zone, pushing the darkness back. They compared it later to, like, trying to ward off demons with light.
After hours of this, they finally make a break for it. Pile into 2 trucks, race to the Hopkinsville police station. It's 11 p.m. They tell the police they've been fighting these creatures for almost 4 hours.
And the police, they were struck by the family's state, not just telling a wild story, but genuinely terrified. shaking, shocked. They took it seriously enough to call for backup from Fort Campbell, the nearby Army base.
Did the police or military find anything? The creatures? Evidence?
Nothing. By the time they got back to the farmhouse, the coast was clear. No creatures, no tracks, nothing obvious. But the terror wasn't over for the family.
They came back.
According to the family, yes. Once the authorities left, the creatures returned. The siege continued, on and off, right up until dawn. Around 5 a.m., as the sun started to rise, the creatures finally retreated for good.
And the descriptions were consistent, even when questioned separately.
Remarkably consistent. All 11 witnesses described them the same way. 3 to 4 feet tall, large glowing eyes, big pointy ears, sort of muscular upper bodies, but thin, spindly, almost atrophied legs.
So the official pushback, what was the explanation this time?
Predictably, dismissal. Suggestions ranged from maybe they got into some Kentucky moonshine.
Which the family vehemently denied. They were known teetotalers.
Correct. Very religious, strict household, no alcohol, no cursing allowed on the property. The other suggestion, maybe they mistook a flock of great horned owls for small, glowing, bulletproof humanoids that grab people's hair and make metallic pinging sounds when shot.
Owls again. Great horned owls this time. It's almost comical if it weren't so terrifying for the people involved.
It highlights that same pattern, doesn't it? Faced with consistent, detailed, terrifying eyewitness accounts from multiple people, the go-to explanation involves misidentifying common nocturnal animals in ways that defy basic biology and physics. The gap between the official record and the lived horror just keeps widening.
Which leads us directly to the next question, right? If these encounters are happening, if the evidence is there, and if the official response is always dismissal or ridicule, what are they hiding?
Exactly. This is where the narrative shifts from terrified civilians and pilots to the very highest levels of power. We're moving into the realm of alleged presidential knowledge, secret committees, and classified pacts with non-human entities.
It starts, according to these sources, with President Eisenhower. Ike. When Truman left office in 1953, the story goes he didn't just hand over the nuclear codes, he handed over the MJ-12 file.
Majestic 12, or Magic 12. This supposedly super-secret committee, allegedly formed way back in 1947 after Roswell, tasked with managing the entire UFO problem. Recovering craft, studying technology, keeping it all under wraps.
And Eisenhower, a 5-star general, commander of Allied forces in Europe, he supposedly took this incredibly seriously, which brings us to that bizarre chip-tooth story.
February 1954, Ike is on a golfing vacation in Palm Springs, California. Suddenly, he disappears for an evening, misses a scheduled public dinner. Where did he go?
The official story, put out quickly by his press secretary, was that he had to make an emergency visit to a local dentist for a chip tooth. Simple, mundane explanation.
Except it wasn't true. Later research, checking presidential library records, dentist records from the area, there's no evidence it ever happened. No record of the dentist visit, no mention of a chipped tooth before or after. The cover story falls apart under scrutiny.
So if he wasn't at the dentist, where was he? This is where the leaks and whistleblower accounts come in, years later.
Right. Intelligence briefings leaked in the 80s claimed Eisenhower used that chipped tooth story as cover for a secret, urgent trip to Edwards Air Force Base. Muroc Army Airfield back then.
To meet
extraterrestrials. Specifically, according to an alleged report by Commander Charles Suggs, Ike met with 2 beings described as Nordics.
Nordics, like tall blonde.
Exactly. Tall, 6 to 7 feet, long blonde hair, striking blue eyes. They were described as looking almost angelic and benevolent.
Okay, so a meeting happens. What was discussed? Was there a deal?
It was apparently a failed negotiation. These Nordics, they reportedly came with a warning and a demand. They told Eisenhower humanity was on a path of self-destruction, particularly with nuclear weapons. They demanded the U.S. immediately stop all nuclear testing.
And Ike, this is the height of the Cold War. Nuclear deterrence is everything.
He refused. He couldn't or wouldn't agree to unilaterally disarm or halt testing. So, the Nordics apparently left. No treaty, no deal, just a warning ignored.
But that wasn't the end of the story, according to these accounts. That failed meeting allegedly led to another meeting, just a year later, February 1955.
This time at Holloman Air Force Base in New Mexico, and this time the meeting was apparently successful. A treaty was signed. But not with the Nordics.
Believe that?
With a different group. A race commonly referred to in these sources as the Greys.
The classic image. Small bodies, big heads, large black eyes.
Precisely. Eyewitness accounts, again, these are disputed but persistent, described Air Force One landing at Holloman, radar being temporarily shut down. Then 3 round, disc-shaped craft descending. One landed near the presidential plane.
And Eisenhower went aboard.
The story goes he walked down the steps of Air Force One, was greeted by a being, possibly shook hands, and then entered the saucer. He was inside for about 45 minutes.
And during that 45 minutes, a treaty was signed. What were the alleged terms? This is incredible stuff.
According to the sources that promote this narrative, yes, a treaty was signed. The Greta Treaty, some call it. And the terms were chillingly specific.
Okay, we'll lay them out.
1, non-interference. Neither side would interfere in the other's affairs. Okay, sounds standard.
Dude.
The Greys would provide the U.S. government with advanced technology, stuff that would give them an edge, presumably over the Soviets. Propulsion, energy, weapons, maybe.
3.
The Greys agreed not to make similar treaties with any other Earth nation, an exclusive deal for the U.S.
Okay. This all sounds like a desperate Cold War bargain. But there was a 4th term, wasn't there? The really disturbing one.
Yes. The 4th term is the moral bombshell. In exchange for the technology and exclusivity, the U.S. government allegedly agreed to allow the Greys to abduct human beings.
Wow. For experimentation.
For biological examination and experimentation, yes. With a supposed caveat. The Greys had to provide a list of all abductees' names to the MJ-12 committee.
So MJ-12 becomes a registry for alien abductions sanctioned by the U.S. government.
That's the horrifying implication. They also supposedly had to guarantee the abductees would be returned unharmed and with their memories wiped. And of course, point 5, the public was never, ever to be told about any of this.
This is, if true, it redefines everything we think we know about government secrecy and ethics in that era.
Yeah.
A deal with the devil, essentially, for technological superiority.
A profoundly disturbing claim, and one that fuels decades of abduction accounts and government cover-up theories. And this alleged culture of secrecy, of presidents knowing more than they let on, it didn't stop with Eisenhower.
Let's jump forward to the 70s.
Yeah.
President Nixon. And bizarrely, the comedian Jackie Gleason.
Yeah, this is one of the strangest anecdotes in the whole field. Gleason, the famous actor and comedian, was known to be a huge UFO buff. He collected books, talked about it constantly, and apparently he was also friends and occasional golfing buddies with President Nixon.
Okay, a weird pairing, but possible. Where does the story go?
The account comes primarily from Gleason's ex-wife, Beverly McKittrick. She claimed that one night in February 1973, Nixon showed up at Gleason's house in Florida, late at night, alone, no Secret Service visible. Highly unusual.
Nixon just rolls up solo to Gleason's house.
According to her story, yes. And then Nixon apparently drove Gleason himself to Homestead Air Force Base, about 35 miles away, to a specific, heavily guarded building on the base.
Why? What did Nixon allegedly show him?
Beverly recounted what Gleason told her later in absolute shock. First, Nixon showed him apparent wreckage from a crashed flying saucer stored in large containers or cases.
Okay, crashed saucer bits. That fits the MJ-12 narrative. But then
Nixon took him into an inner chamber, and Gleason saw, in his words, 6 or 8 of what looked like glass-topped Coke freezers.
Coke freezers, like the kind you see in old convenience stores. Yeah. That detail is so weirdly specific.
It is, and it grounds the absolute horror of what he claimed was inside those freezers.
Which was?
Gleason told his wife they contained the mangled remains of what I took to be children. But they weren't human children. He described them as tiny, maybe 2 feet tall, small, bald heads, disproportionately large ears, clearly not human, and apparently preserved, maybe embalmed.
They dead alien bodies. In freezers, shown to Jackie Gleason by the President of the United States.
That's the story Beverly told. She said Gleason came home white as a sheet, completely shook to the core. He had trouble sleeping for weeks afterwards. Seeing this alleged reality after years of just being fascinated by the idea apparently shattered him.
So what do we make of this? This is a secondhand account from an ex-wife.
Exactly. That's the ambiguity. Option 1, Gleason made the whole thing up, maybe to impress his wife or just spun a yarn. Option 2, Beverly McKittrick fabricated the story after Gleason's death, maybe for attention or publicity. Option 3.
Option 3. Richard Dixon actually took his celebrity golfing buddy on a late-night clandestine trip to a secure military facility to view the corpses of dead aliens stored in freezers.
Each possibility is wild in its own way. And the fact that Nixon's staff later tried to downplay it, saying Nixon himself didn't really believe in UFOs, just adds another layer of potential obfuscation. It leaves you wondering about the depths of secrecy and the strange intersections of power, celebrity, and the truly bizarre.
Okay, so we've gone from pilots, battling strange lights, to people scarred by landed craft, to presidents allegedly making secret pacts and showing celebrities dead aliens. Where else can this possibly go?
Down, deep and underground, and out into theories about manufactured reality and global control. This is where the speculation becomes truly vast and, frankly, terrifying in a different way.
Let's start with the Kecksburg incident. Pennsylvania, December 1965. This one feels like a classic crash retrieval story, but with some weird twists.
It started with a massive fireball seen across multiple states, even into Canada. It caused small fires as fragments fell, but the main event was in Kecksburg, Pennsylvania, where witnesses claimed an object crashed into the woods.
And the response was immediate and overwhelming.
Great. Textbook containment. Armed U.S. soldiers swarmed the area almost instantly, roped it off, turned away everyone, local citizens, even the local volunteer fire department who arrived trying to help. Complete lockdown.
Did anyone get a look at what crashed before the military sealed it off?
Some firefighters did. They reported finding an object partially buried in the ground, about 10 feet long, shaped like a giant acorn, made of metal, and covered in strange symbols like hieroglyphics.
Hieroglyphics on an acorn-shaped object.
That's what they claimed, but they weren't allowed near it for long. Mysterious men in trench coats, the classic Men in Black trope, showed up and ordered them to leave immediately. Later, witnesses saw a large object matching the description being hauled away on a flatbed truck covered by a tarp.
So, standard UFO crash story. Or something else. There's that Nazi connection theory, isn't there?
There is. John Ventry from MUFON put forward a compelling alternative theory. He argued the Kecksburg object wasn't extraterrestrial at all. He believes it was a top-secret General Electric Mark II re-entry vehicle, basically a spy satellite capsule.
Launched by the U.S. But why the secrecy and the hieroglyphics and the Nazi connection?
Ventry connects it to Operation Paperclip, the U.S. program that brought Nazi scientists over after WWII. He suggests the technology in the Mark II, specifically its shape and possibly its guidance or heat shielding, was derived from advanced secret Nazi projects.
Like Die Glock. The bell.
Exactly. The acorn shape is strikingly similar to drawings and descriptions of Die Glock, a supposed Nazi wonder weapon. Ventry argues the hieroglyphics might have been manufacturing marks or test symbols, misinterpreted in the dark and panic.
What about the glow? Witnesses mentioned a green glow.
Ventry points out that the Mark II re-entry vehicle was known to use copper in its heat shield, and copper burns with a distinct green flame upon atmospheric re-entry. So he suggests Kecksburg wasn't an alien crash, but a controlled crash or failure of highly classified, possibly ethically dubious U.S. technology derived from Nazi science. The cover-up wasn't about aliens, but about hiding that secret.
Okay, that's a fascinating alternative. From secret tech above ground, let's go deep underground. Dulce, New Mexico. 1979. The alleged battle.
This involves Phil Schneider, right?
Yes, Phil Schneider, a geologist and engineer who claimed he worked on constructing deep underground military bases, or DUMBs. He became suspicious because of the heavy military presence, special forces, operating near these construction sites, like the one near Dulce. He felt they were hiding something much bigger than just strategic bunkers.
And he claimed he found out what they were hiding.
In dramatic fashion. He said while drilling shafts for the underground base expansion near Dulce, they broke through into a pre-existing cavern or structure below. Air rushed up from what he called a black city, suggesting an occupied level beneath their construction.
So he went down to check it out.
He did, and he claimed he came face-to-face with a 7-foot-tall gray alien. He vividly described his horrible stench, worse than garbage.
And things escalated quickly. Immediately. Schneider claimed he drew his pistol and shot 2 of the beings. But a third one retaliated instantly. It waved its hand, and a blue beam of energy shot out.
A blue beam? What did it do?
The injuries Schneider described were horrific and strangely specific. He said the beam literally opened me up like a fish, hitting his chest, burning off several fingers on his left hand, and even burning his shoes and toenails completely off his feet. It was like a surgical energy weapon.
And this wasn't just a one-on-one fight, it turned into a battle.
According to Schneider, yes. This initial encounter sparked a full-blown firefight between the aliens in this underground base and the U.S. Delta Force soldiers and other personnel working on a DUMB project nearby. He claimed the aliens used these blue energy bolts and that they could turn soldiers inside out. He alleged that 60 Green Berets and government contractors were killed in this underground battle.
60 people killed in a secret underground war with aliens. That's an extraordinary claim.
Absolutely. And Schneider became a prominent figure on the lecture circuit after this, publicly criticizing the government, talking about secret treaties, DUMBs, and the battle. He claimed there were multiple attempts on his life because he was speaking out.
And his death was suspicious.
Highly suspicious, fueling the conspiracy theories around him. He was found dead in his apartment in January 1996. The official ruling was suicide, but the method reported strangulation with a piano wire wrapped 3 times around his neck, tied in the back, is incredibly difficult, many say impossible, to self-inflict. It raised immediate questions of foul play, suggesting he might have been silenced.
Wow. Okay, from underground battles, let's shift continents and look at geopolitics through a very strange lens. The Iraq Stargate theory.
Yeah, this one connects ancient history, modern warfare, and ETs in a really complex web. Author Michael Salla proposed that the primary hidden reason for the 2003 U.S. invasion of Iraq wasn't WMDs or oil, but to seize control of an ancient Stargate.
A Stargate? Like a portal to other worlds, held by Saddam Hussein.
Allegedly, yes. The theory links back to ancient Sumerian cuneiform tablets, which describe interactions with beings called the Anunnaki, literally, those who from heaven to earth came. An advanced ET race.
Who supposedly visited Earth thousands of years ago?
Right. The theory suggests the Anunnaki left Earth around 1700 BC, but they left behind some of their high-tech equipment, including potentially functional portals or stargates.
And Saddam Hussein found one underneath an ancient temple.
Salah claims the portal was located beneath one of Iraq's ancient ziggurat temples, and that Saddam, possibly with help from Russian, German, or French archaeologists sympathetic to him, was actively trying to reactivate this Stargate.
Why? What was his goal?
To fulfill ancient prophecies, perhaps facilitate the return of the Anunnaki, and hopefully be rewarded by these powerful beings with advanced knowledge or even global authority. So the U.S. invasion, in this view, was a preemptive strike to secure this powerful alien technology before Saddam could use it or share it.
That's certainly an alternative reading of recent history. Okay, let's talk about the ultimate conspiracy of deception. Project Bluebeam.
This one is perhaps the most encompassing and chilling theory of manufactured reality. Proposed by Serge Monist, a Canadian investigative journalist, he claimed Project Bluebeam is a secret plan by a shadowy global elite, NASA, the UN, pick your group to fake a massive global event.
Fake what kind of event?
Either a global-scale alien invasion or perhaps a messianic second coming. Using incredibly advanced holographic technology projected into the sky, combined with other techniques.
For what purpose?
To shatter existing social and religious structures, create mass panic and confusion, and then offer a solution. A new world order, a single global government, and potentially a new synthesized global religion, all under the control of this elite group.
And Monist himself died young, didn't he?
He did. In 1996, age 51, reportedly of a heart attack. This was shortly after he claimed he was being targeted and persecuted by the government for exposing Bluebeam. Naturally, his sudden death fueled intense speculation that he was silenced.
What are the alleged stages of this Bluebeam project? It sounds incredibly complex.
Monist outlined 4 main stages. Stage 1 is about discrediting existing religions. This involves, supposedly, staging artificial earthquakes or discoveries at key archaeological sites.
Like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey. Finding things that challenge established religious timelines.
Exactly. Things that make people question their traditional beliefs, creating an intellectual vacuum. Stage 2 is the main event. The global holographic light show.
Projecting giant images in the sky, Jesus, Muhammad, Buddha, alien motherships.
Yes, using satellites to project incredibly realistic three-dimensional holograms visible worldwide. Maybe different figures in different regions tailored to local beliefs, coupled with sound projections to make it seem utterly real. Some point to large-scale modern laser shows or complex fountain displays as potential tests or conditioning for this kind of tech.
Okay, so people see these giant figures. Then what? Stage 3.
Stage 3 is telepathic communication. Using extremely low frequency, ELF, VLF, or other types of waves, to broadcast messages directly into people's minds, making individuals believe they are hearing God or Allah or the aliens speaking directly to them, giving commands, reinforcing the holographic illusion.
Like weaponized versions of technologies explored in things like Project Stargate or MKUltra.
That's the connection theorists make, yes. Leveraging known, if controversial, research into remote viewing and mind influence. And finally, stage 4 is the simulated apocalypse.
Creating chaos to justify The New Order.
Precisely. Orchestrating events that seem like the end times, maybe economic collapse, widespread electronic disruption, possibly blamed on the aliens or divine wrath, perhaps even simulated natural disasters using technologies like HAARP, according to some versions. This manufactured chaos paves the way for the salvation offered by the New World Order. Some theorists even point to the global psychological impact and control measures seen during events like the COVID-19 pandemic as a potential blueprint or test run for this kind of mass manipulation.
It's the ultimate paranoia-inducing scenario, a completely faked reality imposed on everyone.
It really is, which is why, after diving into these deep, dark conspiracy theories, it's crucial we touch on a counterpoint, the reality of hoaxes in this field.
We need a reality check. And the Dr. Jonathan Reed story is a perfect example, isn't it?
A textbook case of how quickly a sensational story can gain traction and how thoroughly it can be debunked. Reed, whose real name turned out to be John Rutter, came out with an absolutely wild story in the late 90s.
What did he claim happened in 1996?
He claimed that while walking his dog in the woods, an alien appeared. This alien then killed his dog by literally ripping its head off and then caused the dog's corpse to disintegrate into white ash. Just unbelievable violence.
So Reed fought back.
He claimed he grabbed a stick and beat the alien described as about 4.5 feet tall to death. He then supposedly took the alien's body home, stored it in his freezer, and filmed it, along with a strange black obelisk device the alien had, which he thought was its ship or portal.
And the story got even weirder.
Oh, yes. He claimed the alien wore a black spandex-like suit that magically repaired itself when he cut it. He even made bizarre claims about having intimate relations with the alien entity before killing it. Later, he claimed mysterious government agents broke into his house, stole the alien body from his freezer, forcing him to go on the run with the obelisk device.
It sounds like a B-movie script. How did it fall apart?
Skeptics immediately noted issues. The video footage looked a bit too polished. His recorded panic sounded theatrical. The real nail in the coffin came from investigators, including the team from the TV show Fact or Faked Paranormal Files.
What did they find?
They found Dr. Jonathan Reed didn't exist. He was John Rutter, living in Seattle with no medical background. They were able to replicate his alien footage using readily available digital effects. And crucially, they subjected Rutter's recordings to a voice stress analysis.
And the result?
It indicated extreme deception regarding the core claims of the incident. The entire story was shown to be a fabrication.
So why is this case important for our deep dive?
Because it's a vital reminder. In a field filled with extraordinary claims, sensational evidence can spread like wildfire and become accepted lore before proper investigation. It shows how easily things can be faked and why rigorous critical thinking is absolutely essential when navigating these accounts, whether they involve alleged government treaties or aliens in freezers. You have to constantly ask, is this real? Is it a mistake? Is it misinterpretation? Or is it an outright hoax? Hashtag tag outro.
So after traveling through all of that, dogfights, burns, goblins, treaties, freezers, underground battles, stargates, fake apocalypses, what does it all mean? Where does it leave us?
Well, we've looked at accounts that really push the boundaries, haven't we? Physics-defying aerial combat reported by trained pilots.
Terrifying biological encounters leaving actual physical evidence like those grid burns at Falcon Lake or the lingering sickness after Flatwoods.
And then these deeply disturbing claims of clandestine government pacts trading human safety for alien tech, maybe even hiding the bodies.
The common thread, the thing that runs through almost all of these credible, well-documented early cases especially, is that massive gap. The gap between what multiple, often trained witnesses swear they saw and experienced.
The physical evidence they sometimes brought back, whether it's radiation readings or scars or metallic fragments.
And the official explanations that often feel so incredibly weak or dismissive. The weather balloons doing impossible maneuvers, the barn owls causing toxic mist, the swamp gas, the misidentified planets.
Right. And the fact that this pattern of dismissal, this official policy of plausible deniability, persisted for so many decades, that's precisely why this whole topic is suddenly breaking into the mainstream political arena now. It's not just fringe stuff anymore.
You're talking about the recent legislation, December 2023.
Exactly. Congress, under pressure, passed new legislation. It directs the National Archives, the official keepers of U.S. history, to actively collect government documents related to UAPs, unidentified anomalous phenomena.
And it's not just about strange lights. The language is specific, isn't it?
Very specific. It includes technologies of unknown origin and, crucially, any records pertaining to non-human intelligence. Congress is basically acknowledging, on paper, that the government might have been hiding information about the very things Gorman chased, Mihalik touched, and Eisenhower allegedly signed treaties with.
And there's a deadline attached to this, right? A ticking clock.
There is. The law mandates that most of these collected records must be made public within 25 years. There's an out, of course, the president can block release, citing specific national security concerns. But the default is now disclosure. The clock started ticking in late 2023.
Which brings us right back to all these stories we've just discussed, all these chilling accounts from the past.
If the government is now being forced by law to potentially open up its secret files on UAPs and non-human intelligence, what exactly is sitting in those files right now?
What high-stakes secrets? Could they relate to those alleged pacts with the Greys? Do they detail the recovery of vehicles like the one at Kecksburg, maybe confirming if it had hieroglyphics or if it was Nazi tech?
Could there be records confirming or denying something like the horrifying battle Schneider described beneath Dulce? What classified documents are currently resting inside that 25-year window?
Just waiting. Waiting for the clock to run down. Waiting to potentially transform from decades-old suppressed nightmares and conspiracy theories into tomorrow's officially acknowledged, potentially terrifying reality.
And maybe that is the most chilling thought of all. What happens when the whispers finally become shouts from the official record? Okay, let's unpack this. We have a really intensive deep dive ahead of us today. It's designed for you, the listener, who, wants more than just headlines. You want the depth, the precision, especially when we tackle these kinds of, extraordinary topics.
Absolutely. And today's mission is, I think, particularly fascinating. We're pulling back the layers on the journey of Dr. Gary Nolan.
Right. A name many might recognize now, but his background, it's pure high-level science. Stanford professor, immunology, genetics. Not exactly the usual profile for someone central to the UAP conversation, is it?
Not at all. And that's what makes the source material here so compelling. We get to see why someone with his specific, very deep expertise in the immune system and cancer research was actually sought out. We're talking the CIA, major aerospace players.
Yeah, it wasn't him seeking them out initially. It was the other way around.
Exactly. And it wasn't just speculation. It was about data. Hard data from his advanced instruments, medical analysis, following a trail.
So we're going to trace that whole path. We'll start by really establishing his credentials, his scientific foundation. You need to understand that first.
Definitely. Then we'll look at the pivot point. How did national security stuff like Havana Syndrome somehow connect to UAP encounters in his work?
And finally, the really unsettling part, perhaps the actual material evidence he's analyzed, things that shouldn't exist according to standard physics and chemistry.
It's quite a story. And like you said, we're starting with probably one of the most highly credentialed scientists to ever seriously engage with this topic.
Okay, so before we get anywhere near UAPs or weird materials, let's just ground ourselves in who Dr. Nolan is professionally. Give us the rundown.
Right. So academically, he's a professor in the Department of Pathology at Stanford University School of Medicine. That alone is significant.
Stanford Med School, top tier.
Top tier. And he holds the Ratchford and Carla A. Harris Endowed Professorship, which, in academia, an endowed chair isn't just a title. It's recognition for really fundamental field-shaping contributions.
Okay. And his field, primarily what generates those 89,000 citations the sources mentioned, it wasn't physics initially, right?
Not at all. His core world is immunology, cancer research. His scientific obsession, you could say, is about seeing more, measuring more. He develops technologies.
Tools.
Tools for what exactly? For collecting massive amounts of data, what he calls high-dimensional data about individual cells, specifically immune cells and cancer cells, understanding their state, their function, their interactions in minute detail.
High-dimensional data, so measuring lots and lots of things about one cell at the same time.
Precisely. We should definitely talk about one of his earlier but huge contributions because it really shows his impact. He developed the 293 T-cell technique.
293 T-cell technique. Okay, break that down for us. Why is that important?
Well, think about gene therapy. The whole idea is you want to deliver healthy genetic material into a patient's cells to fix a problem, right?
Right, like fixing a faulty gene.
Exactly. But you need a delivery system, a vehicle to carry that genetic material into the target cells. Retroviruses and lentiviruses are often used as these tiny biological delivery trucks.
Okay.
Nolan's 293 T-cell technique became the foundational method used pretty much worldwide to manufacture these viral vectors, these delivery trucks, safely and efficiently. It's how you make the tools for gene therapy work on a practical scale.
Wow. So it's not just a discovery, it's an enabling technology, the thing that lets a whole field move forward.
Absolutely. Kind of waves it off now as old technology, but its sheer ubiquity. I mean, it became the industry standard. That generates royalties, sure, but more importantly, it cements your influence.
Yeah.
You build a key piece of the infrastructure.
That's serious scientific weight. And this pattern of innovation, it wasn't just confined to the academic lab, was it? The sources talk about entrepreneurship.
Oh, yeah, he's a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah.
The notes say he started about a dozen companies.
A dozen.
Yeah, and achieved something like 8 successful exits, which, if you know anything about biotech startups.
That's an insane success rate. Biotech is notoriously difficult, high failure.
Exactly. It shows he has this rare combination, not just the scientific vision, but also the practical ability to execute, to turn an idea into a viable product or company. That's a different kind of genius.
This is clearly not slowing down. What's the cutting edge for him now? Still immunology.
He's still involved there, but his current big pushes are into 2 main areas, according to the sources. One is artificial intelligence. He's got 2 spin-out companies applying AI to these massive biological data sets he knows how to generate.
Makes sense. Using AI to find patterns in that high-dimensional beta we talked about.
Precisely. And the other area, which might be particularly relevant for our later discussion, is atomic imaging.
Atomic imaging. Okay, that sounds intense. We're talking about seeing things at the atomic level.
Exactly. And not just seeing, but analyzing with extreme resolution. He's developing a new kind of instrument. It's a fusion, really.
A fusion of what?
It combines 2 powerful but previously separate technologies: atomic probe tomography and field ion microscopy. APT gives you the 3D structure and what elements are there, atom by atom. FAM lets you visualize the surface arrangement of atoms.
And putting them together lets you do what? What's the breakthrough?
It allows them to achieve sub-angstrom resolution. Okay, an angstrom is tiny, right? 1/10,000,000th of a meter.
Mind-bogglingly small.
Right. And the actual bond length between 2 atoms, the distance holding them together, that's measured in sub-angstroms. So this instrument, it doesn't just see atoms clumped together, it can potentially map the precise chemical bonds between individual atoms locally.
Okay, wow. So you can see not just what atoms are there, but exactly how they're connected in a tiny specific spot.
That's the goal. And you can immediately see how that capability would be absolutely critical if you were handed, say, a piece of material of completely unknown, maybe even exotic origin, which, spoiler alert, is where this heads.
Right. We'll definitely circle back to that. But just looking at the numbers again, 50 to 60 patents, over 350 research articles, those 89,000 citations. He's clearly a giant in his field.
No question. Top percentile.
Let's quickly touch on how he generates the data that leads to those citations. You mentioned measurement tech. What are Cyto, Codex, MBR, those his inventions?
Yeah, they stem from his labs and companies. They're all part of this push for high-dimensional data. Maybe, for example, mass cytometry by imaging. Think about it this way. Traditional methods might let you measure maybe, 5 or 6 different things, different parameters, about a single cell.
Okay.
Nolan's instruments, like Codex and MeBe, they use antibodies tagged with heavy metal isotopes. This allows researchers to stain a cell and measure 30, 40, even 50 or more different attributes of that one cell all at the same time.
50 things at once.
Yes, and crucially, spatially. Meaning you know where within the cell structure those attributes are located.
Yeah.
It's like going from a blurry black and white photo to a super high-res, multi-layered 3D map of the cell's inner workings.
Okay, so if most scientists are using a good camera, Nolan essentially built a hyperspectral imaging satellite just to look at one cell.
That's a pretty good analogy, yeah. And that specific expertise, the ability to find the tiny signal, the needle in the microscopic haystack, by measuring everything around it with incredible precision, that's exactly the skill set that, later gets noticed for very different kinds of haystacks.
Fascinating. It's not just the discoveries, it's the mindset behind building the tools for discovery.
Exactly. And he talks quite a bit about this, about the role of intuition in science, which is interesting, right? Because science is often presented as this very linear, logical, step-by-step process.
Right, like following a recipe.
Yeah, but Nolan argues that's often just how the paper is written after the discovery. He sees intuition, that aha moment, the sudden recognition of a pattern, and absolutely critical for generating the initial hypothesis, the spark.
So the intuition comes first, and the rigorous logic, the justification, that gets filled in later for the publication.
That's his take. He feels the introduction of most papers is kind of misleading because it smooths over the messy, intuitive leap that actually started the whole thing.
And he has a method for harnessing this, his magic mix.
Yeah, he calls it marrying creativity with practicality.
Yeah.
He describes this really rapid filtering process he uses. He'll brainstorm possibilities, but then immediately rank order them and set these very clear intellectual cutoffs.
Cutoffs, like what?
Well, first there's the obviously ridiculous stuff. His example is magic dwarves run the universe.
Right.
Okay, that's below the line, dismiss immediately.
Easy one.
But the crucial cutoff, the one he thinks is key to his success, especially in business, is separating the possible but impractical or really hard to prove from the provable. He focuses relentlessly on what can actually be demonstrated, tested, proven. It avoids wasting time and resources on dead ends.
Laser focus on provability. That sounds like a good strategy for getting things done, especially with limited funding or time.
Definitely. And it leads into this concept he calls reverse engineering the future.
Reverse engineering the future. What does that mean?
It means you don't just guess what might happen. You try to identify an almost inevitable future state, something that has to happen based on where technology or science is heading.
Okay.
And then you work backwards. You map out the necessary milestones, the intermediate steps, the provable technological hurdles you need to overcome sequentially to get to that inevitable future. It's like having the destination on the map and then plotting the only viable roads to get there.
Predictive science combined with really rigorous project planning.
Exactly. It's a powerful framework. And what's really fascinating, and ties back to intuition, is that Nolan actually connects this high-level thinking to specific brain structures. His research points to the basal ganglia.
The basal ganglia, isn't that usually associated with like motor control, muscle memory?
Traditionally, yes.
Yeah.
We learn it's the brain's sort of autopilot. It handles subconscious stuff, controlling your muscles when you walk, coordinating movements, making those instant adjustments you don't even think about, like driving a car.
Right, automatic responses.
But Nolan's research, and others, suggests it evolved. It developed what he calls an abstraction layer.
An abstraction layer on top of the motor control part.
Kind of. It means the same neural machinery that evolved for making split-second decisions about physical movement, incredibly complex, high-stakes decisions, got repurposed or adapted for abstract reasoning.
How does that work? Give me an example.
Think of a chess grandmaster. They look at a complex board and instantly see patterns, threats, opportunities that a novice wouldn't see in hours. Or a great athlete, a quarterback, reading the entire field in a split second and making the perfect throw. They're processing sparse, complex data and making an instantaneous, high-quality decision.
So that's intuition, making good decisions fast with incomplete information.
That's how Nolan frames it, scientifically. It's a highly evolved form of pattern recognition. The basal ganglia, through this abstraction layer, lets the brain take insufficient input and leap to a plausible, often correct hypothesis or action. It's a complex reflex for thinking.
Okay, so we have this picture of a scientist who's not just brilliant, but deeply analytical about the process of discovery, highly practical, and has built tools to see things with unprecedented resolution. This very calibrated, risk-assessing mind. You can start to see why certain groups might eventually come knocking on his door when faced with something truly inexplicable.
Exactly. He had the tools, the mindset, and, as we'll see eventually, the willingness to look.
So how does a Stanford immunologist focused on cancer and building these incredible cell mapping tools get pulled into the world of UAPs and government secrets? It seems like a massive leap.
Well, the great irony here is that his first major public foray into anything related to this field was actually doing a definitive debunking.
Ah, right. I remember this, the Atacama mummy case. That was huge news for a while.
Exactly. Around 2012, this tiny 6-inch long skeleton was found in the Atacama Desert in Chile. And it looked weird, really weird. It was being hyped globally by some as absolute proof of, an alien visitor.
Yeah, the images were striking, the elongated skull, the small size. It definitely didn't look typically human.
Right, so Nolan got involved. And he approached it exactly like a scientific problem, like analyzing a tumor sample. He got a sample, specifically a rib sample, wanting the bone marrow, because that's often where you get the best preserved DNA.
And he applied his high-end genomic tools to it.
He did. And the results were unambiguous. His analysis proved it was human. A human baby, likely born very preterm and tragically, suffering from a whole suite of severe genetic mutations. These mutations perfectly explained the skeletal abnormalities, the size, everything that made it look unusual.
So case closed. Human, not ET. A rigorous piece of science shutting down sensational claims.
Absolutely. But here's the unintended consequence the source material points out. This act of meticulous debunking acted like a flare.
A flare. How so?
Well, it signaled two very different groups simultaneously. On one hand, the skeptics in the scientific community saw him as someone willing to apply top-tier science to fringe claims and get definitive answers.
Oh.
He wasn't afraid to touch the weird stuff, but he demanded rigorous proof.
Okay, establishes his credibility as impartial.
Exactly. But on the other hand, the intelligence community apparently noticed too. They saw a world-class scientist at a top institution with cutting-edge analytical tools who had demonstrated he could handle a controversial topic objectively, without bias, and wasn't scared off by the subject matter itself.
Ah, so the debunking ironically put him on their radar as someone reliable and capable of analyzing potentially anomalous biological or material samples.
Precisely. Which leads directly to this really extraordinary moment, the turning point,
Oh.
the CIA visit.
This wasn't like a phone call or an email, they just showed up.
According to the sources, yes. A representative or representatives from the CIA and also someone from a major aerospace company showed up unannounced at his Stanford office.
Wow, okay, that must have been surreal. What was the immediate vibe? Did he know what it was about?
Initially, no. The sources suggest his first reaction was professional, but maybe a bit skeptical or confused. They presented credentials, explained they needed help.
Help with what? Not aliens, presumably.
Not initially, no. They came to him with a medical problem. They had patients, intelligence officers, military personnel, maybe others who had suffered tangible physical harm. They had MRIs, medical records showing things like internal scarring, weird lesions.
Real physical injuries in national security people?
Yes, and they needed his specific expertise. They knew about his advanced technologies, like CytoF, which is related to IamAbhi. They could do deep analysis on blood samples, looking for subtle cellular pathologies, immune system responses, things standard hospital tests might miss. They wanted a complete high-tech medical workup.
So they came to the guy who could see the invisible details in cells, hoping he could find the cause of these unexplained injuries.
That was the entry point. Purely medical, initially focused on harm to personnel.
So when did the UAP connection come into it? Because that seems like the elephant in the room.
Well, apparently that emerged later in the process as they gathered more detailed patient histories. Nolan himself admits that when the topic of UAPs first came up in relation to some of these cases, he initially thought it was a joke. Like, really? You're bringing UFOs into this serious medical investigation?
Understandable reaction for a mainstream scientist.
Totally. But for a small subset of these patients, when they were asked detailed questions about the circumstances surrounding the onset of their symptoms, they reported being in close proximity to, well, things that you would call a UFO, as Nolan put it. That connection was volunteered by the patients, linking the strange object to the subsequent physical harm.
But the main thrust, the initial request from the CIA and aerospace, was figure out what's hurting our people.
Exactly. Find the cause of the pathology. The UAP link was an unexpected and initially dismissed variable that emerged from the patient data itself.
Okay, so Nolan and his team agree to help. They have these patients, national security personnel, with unexplained physical symptoms. How did they approach it?
Methodically. Using that same rigorous, data-driven approach from his cancer research, they spent about 2 to 3 years working with the IC, just trying to characterize what they were calling interference syndrome at the time.
Interference syndrome, not Havana syndrome yet.
Not yet. That term came later. They were basically taking this wide array of symptoms reported by the patients: headaches, dizziness, cognitive fog, weird sounds, balance problems, and meticulously matching them to established international diagnostic codes, ICD codes, trying to find patterns, clusters of symptoms.
Building a clinical picture from the ground up using standardized medical classifications.
Exactly. And this detailed, systematic approach paid off fairly quickly for the majority of the cases. The cluster of symptoms they were defining, it lined up almost perfectly with reports that started emerging publicly around 2015, 2016.
Ah, the incidents at the U.S. Embassy in Havana, Cuba?
Precisely. What became widely known as Havana syndrome. The symptoms Nolan's group had independently characterized in their cohort matched what was being reported by diplomats and military personnel affected abroad.
And the source material, Nolan's perspective, is pretty clear on whether Havana syndrome is a real phenomenon.
Oh, absolutely unequivocal. He states it's 100% real. Based on the work his group did and the consensus among the scientists involved, the strong hypothesis points to a directed energy weapon.
A weapon.
Yes, specifically a focused microwave weapon, something designed not to kill necessarily, but to cause debilitating neurological effects, localized damage, without leaving obvious external marks. His description is chillingly blunt. His purpose seems to be to bake brain cells.
Good grief. And this is now officially recognized, right?
Yes, it's no longer just a news story. The U.S. government, through Health and Human Services, HHS, now formally designates these cases as anomalous health incidents, or AHIs. It's a recognized national security threat, acknowledged health effect.
Okay, so Nolan's lab, with its advanced tools, played a key role in helping to characterize this real-world threat affecting U.S. personnel. That's significant in itself.
Hugely significant. But here's where it pivots back towards the truly anomalous. By successfully characterizing the Havana Syndrome AHI cases, which accounted for the vast majority, maybe 90 out of the initial 100 or so patients they looked at, they effectively filtered them out.
Right. They identified the likely cause, the pattern, for most of them.
And once those cases were better understood and presumably handed over for specific government management under the AHI framework, they were left with a small handful of outliers.
The ones that didn't quite fit the Havana profile.
Exactly. A small group, maybe just 5 or 6 individuals remained. These were the ones where the link to a UAP proximity event was reported, and crucially, their symptomology was subtly different from the main Havana cluster.
Different how? What were the key distinctions in the UAP-related cases?
While the Havana cases often involve those intense neurological symptoms, balance issues, cognitive problems, the UAP proximity patients, according to Nolan's findings, were more likely to exhibit things like arrhythmias, serious heart rhythm disturbances.
Heart problems. That's different.
Very different. And also specific kinds of scarring, sometimes internal, visible on MRI, but sometimes external scarring, often reported in a specific location, the back of the neck. This suggested a more localized, perhaps radiative type of damage, distinct from the broader effects seen in the microwave exposure cases.
Radiative, like radiation burns, but maybe from an unknown source or frequency.
That seems to be the implication, a different mechanism of injury altogether, linked specifically to being near one of these unidentified objects.
Now, okay, 5 or 6 cases. Statistically, that's tiny. Most scientists would, frankly, dismiss that as noise, maybe psychosomatic effects, misreporting.
Nolan acknowledges that. He's very clear. The plural of anecdote is not proof. You can't base a scientific conclusion on just a handful of stories. But, he argues strongly, the plural of anecdote is definitely hypothesis, especially when the source of the anecdotes is considered.
Meaning the credibility of the witnesses?
Exactly. These weren't random people reporting lights in the sky. These were intelligence officers, military personnel, individuals who had undergone extensive psychological screening as part of their careers. They passed psych evaluations.
So less likely to be fabricating or hallucinating, institutionally speaking.
That's the assessment. So you have credible witnesses who pass psychological checks, reporting similar types of encounters, linked to similar distinct physical symptoms, like the arrhythmias and the specific scarring patterns that didn't match the larger Havana syndrome group. For Nolan, that combination provided just enough signal, just enough of a persistent, unexplained anomaly to say, okay, this warrants serious, ongoing investigation. It wasn't proof, but it was a hypothesis worth pursuing.
Okay, so there's a signal, however small, suggesting a link between UAP proximity and specific physical harm. But investigating this, it seems incredibly difficult, especially within official channels. The sources mention the case of John Burroughs.
Ah, yes, the Rendlesham Forest incident. This case really highlights the institutional barriers, the almost reflexive secrecy that hampers any real investigation into the effects of these encounters.
Rendlesham Forest, that was the famous sighting near U.S. air bases in the UK back in 1980, right? With military witnesses.
That's the one. John Burroughs was one of the security personnel involved, very close to the object. Years later, he developed a serious, debilitating heart condition.
Okay, a potential link. Similar to the cases Nolan studied later, what happened when he tried to get medical help?
This is where it gets, frankly, outrageous. He needed treatment, needed to file claims with the Veterans Administration. You'd think, given his service in the documented incident.
It should be straightforward.
You'd think. But his official medical file, the records detailing his health around the time of the incident, it was suddenly classified as top secret.
His own medical file. Classified.
Yes, which meant he couldn't access it. He couldn't use it to prove to the VA or his insurance that his heart condition was potentially linked to that service incident. They effectively blocked him from getting the care he needed by hiding his own medical history behind a wall of secrecy.
That's Unbelievable. Betrayal, really. How did he resolve it?
It took years, a long, difficult fight. Ultimately, he had to get help from the late Senator John McCain. McCain actually had to intervene, write a formal letter demanding the VA declassify and release the file so Burroughs could finally proceed with his claim and get treatment.
Just to get his own medical records for a heart condition, it shows how deep the resistance runs, doesn't it? Secrecy first, science and patient care second, or maybe not even second.
It demonstrates a systemic reflex to classify anything related to UAP encounters, even the medical consequences, making objective study almost impossible through official channels.
So, to try and circumvent this culture of secrecy and, let's be honest, the academic ridicule that often comes with this topic, Nolan co-founded an organization, the Saul Foundation.
That's right. He founded it with Peter Skafish, who's an anthropologist, looking specifically at the experiences and often the trauma associated with being an experiencer of these phenomena.
Interesting anthropological angle there.
Yeah, focusing on the human impact. And notably, the other co-founder was David Grush.
David Grush, the whistleblower who later testified before Congress about alleged secret reverse engineering program.
The very same. So you have Nolan, the hard scientist, Skafish, the anthropologist focused on experiencers, and Grush, the insider intelligence figure. Quite a trio.
What was the goal of the Saul Foundation?
The core idea, as Nolan describes it, was to create a kind of picket fence, a protected space.
A picket fence.
Yeah, a safe area where serious people, academics, military folks, credible witnesses, scientists from different fields could come together and discuss UAPs and all the related phenomena openly without fear of getting laughed out of their jobs or having their reputations destroyed.
So, covering everything from the material science, which is Nolan's area, to the psychological effects Skafish studies, and potentially the intelligence aspects Grush was involved in.
Exactly, creating a nonpartisan platform for legitimate discussion across disciplines. The focus was very much on open science, getting data out there, removing the stigma so maybe others could start connecting the dots and forming unifying hypotheses.
Okay, that makes sense. Building a community outside the usual resistant channels. And this commitment to hard data brings us back to Nolan's primary scientific toolkit, materials analysis.
Right. Leveraging those incredible atomic imaging and measurement capabilities we talked about earlier, he started analyzing actual physical objects, materials allegedly recovered from or associated with UAP landings or events. Often this was in collaboration with Jacques Vallée.
Jacques Vallée, another big name in this field for decades, a scientist himself, astronomer, computer scientist.
And meticulous researcher. So, let's talk about some specific samples mentioned in the sources. First, the really famous one, the Ubatuba, Brazil sample.
Ubatuba. This supposedly dates back to the 50s or 60s. An alleged explosion or crash.
That's the story. Fragments of metallic material recovered after an event. Nolan got access to samples through Vallée and others. His analysis confirmed what earlier, less sophisticated tests had hinted at. The material was incredibly pure silicon.
How pure?
99.999% pure silicon. Now, today, we can make silicon that pure for advanced semiconductors, microchips.
Right, requires very specialized industrial processes.
Exactly. But back in the 1950s or 60s, producing silicon of that purity was extremely difficult, highly unusual, and certainly not something you'd just find lying around. Silicon doesn't occur naturally in that pure metallic form on Earth.
So right away, that purity points to some kind of deliberate industrial process, not natural. Could it have been, say, a secret human military project from that era?
Possible, based on purity alone. But that's where the second finding comes in, the truly anomalous part, the isotope ratios.
Ah, okay, isotopes again. Explain this. What did they find?
Right, isotopes are versions of an element with different numbers of neutrons, remember? Like magnesium, Mg has stable isotopes, Mg24, Mg25, and Mg26.
And on Earth, the ratio between these is basically fixed everywhere.
Exactly, because all the material on Earth formed from the same primordial stuff in our solar system's nebula. For magnesium, that ratio is consistently about 80% Mg24, 11% Mg25, and 9% Mg26. It's like a fingerprint for terrestrial material.
Okay. So what did Nolan find in the Ubatuba sample's magnesium?
In at least one sample, with a clear chain of custody back to the original event, the magnesium isotope ratios were, well, Nolan's word was higgledy-piggledy. Scientifically, they were statistically anomalous. They didn't follow the expected 8-to-1-19 pattern at all. The ratios were completely scrambled, inconsistent with any known natural or standard industrial process using Earth-sourced materials.
Whoa, okay, let me get this straight. A material from the 50s, 60s with industrial-level purity also has isotope ratios for magnesium that look fundamentally non-terrestrial.
That's the finding. It strongly suggests the material was manufactured, yes, but potentially using feedstock raw materials that didn't originate from Earth or were processed in a way that fundamentally altered those natural isotopic ratios, something we don't typically do or even know how to do on that scale.
That is a very significant claim based on hard chemistry. His conclusion wasn't, it's alien, but...
His conclusion was cautious but firm. This object was clearly of industrial purpose, and its isotopic composition was inconsistent with standard Earth materials or manufacturing processes of that time, or even now in some ways. It's an anomaly-demanding explanation.
Okay. Let's move to the second example mentioned, the Council Bluffs, Iowa sample. What was the story there?
This was apparently witnessed by police officers. An object, described like a UFO, was seen dropping molten metal into a frozen field, about 30 pounds of it recovered.
Dropping molten metal? That's bizarre. What did Nolan find when he analyzed this sample?
This one was different. He analyzed the composition, mostly iron, titanium, aluminum, common enough metals. And crucially, this time, there were no isotope ratio anomalies. The atoms themselves looked perfectly terrestrial.
Okay, so not necessarily non-earthly origin based on isotopes. What was the weird part then?
The weird part was the physical structure of the metal itself. Nolan found that the different metals, the iron, titanium, aluminum, were incompletely mixed.
Incompletely mixed, what does that mean?
He used a great analogy. Imagine you take 3 flavors of ice cream chocolate, vanilla, strawberry. You melt them slightly, put them in a bucket, and stir maybe just once or twice.
Okay.
If you then took a scoop from one spot, you'd get mostly chocolate with a bit of vanilla. Take another scoop a few inches away, you might get mostly strawberry with some chocolate. The flavors wouldn't be uniformly blended.
Right, you'd have streaks and blobs.
Exactly. That's what this 30-pound chunk of metal was like. Even though it had clearly been molten very high temperature, the constituent metals hadn't fully diffused into each other to form a homogeneous alloy, like you'd expect from a normal smelting or casting process where everything mixes evenly.
Huh. Why would that happen? Couldn't it just be, I don't know, sloppy work? Or maybe some kind of rapid cooling, or like a thermite reaction, someone suggested?
They consider those possibilities.
Yep.
Thermite was ruled out because it typically leaves specific chemical byproducts, residues, which weren't found in the analysis. And while rapid cooling can sometimes trap non-equilibrium states, the scale of this 30 pounds of metal and the specific way it was incompletely mixed didn't quite fit standard explanations.
But the bigger question is?
The bigger question is, why? Who would drop 30 pounds of high temperature, incompletely mixed, high-strength metals, titanium alloys are strong, from the sky into a field? Even if it was some kind of industrial byproduct or accident, the delivery method dropped from an aerial object witnessed by police and the peculiar state of the material itself.
Yeah.
It creates this huge, unexplained question mark. It's another artifact that defies easy categorization.
So in both cases, Ubatuba and Council Bluffs, Nolan's applying high-end material science, finding anomalies, one isotopic, one structural, that point away from conventional explanations.
Precisely. His approach is to generate unambiguous, measurable data that forces you to consider non-conventional possibilities. And importantly, he wants this data out in the open, published, so other scientists can look at it, critique it, and maybe, eventually, someone can formulate a theory that actually explains these persistent, puzzling artifacts.
Okay, so we have the physical evidence side, these anomalous materials. But a huge part of the UAP phenomenon, especially what's driven the recent government interest, comes from witness reports, particularly from the military.
Absolutely. Thousands of reports, many from highly trained observers like fighter pilots, radar operators, naval personnel. And Nolan, like others analyzing this data, synthesizes these reports into a set of recurring, observable characteristics, maneuvers and behaviors that consistently seem to, well, break the laws of physics as we know them.
The famous 5 observables, sometimes called. Let's go through them. What's the first one?
The first is instantaneous acceleration and deceleration. This is maybe the most mind-bending one.
Meaning they go really fast, really quickly.
Beyond that, we're talking objects observed going from a dead stop, zero velocity, hovering, to speeds of thousands of miles per hour. The classic example often cited is going from near sea level to orbital altitudes, like 80,000 feet, in less than a second.
Less than a second. The acceleration would be astronomical.
Exactly. The sources estimate that for even a relatively small object, say 1 ton, to achieve that kind of acceleration, the energy required would momentarily be greater than the entire annual nuclear power output of the United States. Just staggering amounts of energy.
Okay, enormous energy requirement. But there's another problem too, isn't there? What about inertia? What happens to anything inside an object accelerating like that?
That's the real killer implication. Inertia. Newton's first law, right. An object resists changes in motion. If you're in a car that suddenly accelerates massively, you get slammed back into your seat. If it decelerates, instantly hits a wall, you keep going forward. The G-forces would be immense, hundreds or thousands of Gs.
Enough to crush any known biological organism or even sophisticated machinery.
Instantly. So for an object to perform these maneuvers, accelerating instantly, stopping on a dime, as pilots report, it must possess some technology that negates or somehow controls inertia and momentum itself. It has to cancel out those crushing G-forces.
Oh, yeah.
And we simply have no idea how to do that. It violates fundamental physics as we understand it.
Okay, that's number one. What are the next two? They seem related to how these things fly.
Right. Number two is no apparent flight surfaces. These objects are often described as spheres, disks, cubes, tic-tacs, shapes that lack wings, fins, rotors, propellers, or any visible means of aerodynamic lift, according to Bernoulli's principle.
So they're not flying by, pushing air around like a plane or helicopter?
Doesn't seem like it. They appear to move independently of the surrounding air, or they're generating their own localized propulsive field, maybe gravity manipulation, something exotic.
And number three connects to that.
Yes. No apparent exhaust or energy output, or at least none that we typically detect. These objects are reported moving at incredible speeds, sometimes hypersonic, without leaving the expected heat signatures.
Why is that significant? Especially for military sensors like FLIR, infrared cameras?
Because anything moving that fast through the atmosphere should generate immense heat from air friction. A hypersonic missile glows brightly on infrared. A jet leaves a massive plume of hot exhaust gases. Yet these UAPs are often described as being visually or radar detected, but appearing cold on infrared or lacking any visible propulsion trail.
So how are they moving without generating detectable heat or exhaust?
That's the mystery. It implies either an incredibly efficient, low-temperature propulsion system we don't understand, or maybe something even stranger, like they're creating a warp bubble or manipulating space-time locally to bypass friction altogether. Wild speculation. But the lack of heat is a hard data point that defies conventional explanation.
Okay. Instant acceleration, no wings, no heat. What's number four?
Number four relates to their maneuverability. Zigzags and controlled movement at high speeds.
Meaning they don't just go fast in straight lines.
Right. They're observed making sudden, sharp, instantaneous changes in direction. Not gradual arcs like an airplane banking, but sharp right-angle turns or complex zigzag patterns, all while moving at very high velocities.
And again, inertia is the problem there.
Absolutely. For any conventional craft subject to inertia, attempting such a maneuver at speed would rip it apart, or at the very least subject the occupants to unsurvivable G-forces. The ability to execute these non-ballistic, non-arc trajectories indicates, again, some form of absolute control over momentum and inertia that is beyond our current physics.
Okay. And the fifth observable characteristic.
Transmedium travel. This is the ability to operate seamlessly across different physical environments.
Wait.
Like moving from the vacuum of space into the Earth's atmosphere at high speed and then plunging directly into the ocean, maneuvering underwater, and perhaps even launching back out into the air or space. All without apparently slowing down much or changing form.
We see reports of that, especially from Navy pilots, objects diving into the water.
Exactly. We have drones now that can sort of do air and water, but very slowly, very clumsily. This reported seamless, high-performance transition between space, air, and water.
Right.
That represents a mastery of physics across different states of matter that is far beyond anything we can currently engineer.
So these five observables, instant acceleration, no lift surfaces, no heat exhaust, sharp turns, transmedium travel, they paint a consistent picture from military reports of technology that behaves in ways our science can't explain.
Precisely. It's the consistency and credibility of these reports, detailing violations of known physics, that really push the issue into the mainstream defense and intelligence communities.
These are still observations, anecdotes, right? Highly credible, but hard to study repeatably. Is there any effort to get more systematic, measurable data? Nolan's involved in something called the Skywatcher experiment.
Yes. Recognizing the need for repeatable, hard data, he's involved with a privately funded group that is setting up sophisticated sensor arrays.
Sensor arrays like cameras, radar.
More than that. Likely multispectral cameras, radio frequency detectors, magnetometers, gravimeters, a whole suite of instruments deployed in specific areas known for UAP activity, cleared areas, they call them.
And the goal is just to wait and hope something shows up.
Not entirely. The really intriguing part, according to the sources, is that one member of this team, apparently drawing on insights from previous military work, has identified or refined a specific electromagnetic sequence.
An electromagnetic sequence, like a radio signal.
Something like that. The details are kept private, understandably. But the claim is that transmitting this specific complex sequence seems to, well, attract these objects, or at least increase the probability of them appearing in the vicinity of the sensors.
Whoa. So, like, potentially provoking an appearance for study, creating a limited form of repeatability.
That seems to be the idea. If you can reliably get the phenomenon to manifest when you transmit the signal, you can gather objective, quantifiable measurements of its behavior, its energy signatures, its magnetic field effects, all the things you need for real scientific analysis, moving beyond just eyewitness accounts.
That's a huge potential step. Taking the science from passive observation and analysis of past events to potentially proactive real-time measurement.
It's aiming for the holy grail of UAP research. Controlled, repeatable data acquisition. If they can achieve that, it changes the game entirely.
Okay, so we've covered Nolan's background, his tools, the medical cases, the material analysis, the physics-defying characteristics. After immersing himself in all this, applying his rigorous scientific mind to it for years, what's his bottom line? What's his provisional conclusion, as unsettling as it might be?
Well, he stated it quite directly, and it certainly caused a stir. His provisional conclusion, based on the totality of the evidence he's examined, is there's something non-human here, and it's been here for a long time.
Non-human, and here for a long time. That's a profound statement from someone of his scientific stature.
It is, and he often reframes the question for his skeptical colleagues. He argues they shouldn't be asking, is there something here? Because that question often comes with a built-in assumption that the answer is no.
Right. It sets up a demand for absolute proof against a default of dismissal.
Exactly. Instead, he says the more scientifically valid question to start with is, can there be something here? Is it possible, based on what we know about the universe?
And his answer to that question
is a clear yes. The universe is vast, about 14 billion years old. Our solar system, Earth, humanity, we're relative newcomers. The conditions for life, possibly intelligent life, could have risen billions of years before us elsewhere. So the possibility that something non-human could be here, absolutely, cosmologically speaking.
And if something is here and has been for a long time, the implications are staggering.
He goes there. He suggests that if something non-human is here, it's likely been here far longer than human civilization has existed, which leads to this really provocative idea, referencing the writer Charles Fort, that maybe Earth is probably somebody else's property.
Wow. Okay. That shifts the perspective entirely, doesn't it? From are aliens visiting to have we always been living in someone else's backyard?
It's a deeply unsettling thought. And he really pushes back against the automatic ridicule from some in the scientific community. He asks them to just hold their sarcasm for a moment and consider the sheer volume of reports, the credible witnesses, the physical evidence like the materials. Is dismissal truly the scientific response? Or is investigation warranted?
He's basically challenging the scientific establishment's blind spot on this.
And doing so took considerable personal and professional courage. This wasn't an easy path. He explicitly mentions being warned off the topic.
Warned off by who?
He recounts being told directly by a senior official at the National Cancer Institute, his own field back around 2014 or 2015, that getting involved with UAPs would absolutely ruin his career. A direct threat to his reputation and standing.
Ruin his career, just for looking into it scientifically.
Apparently so. That was the climate back then. Extreme stigma.
What was his response to that official?
Classic Nolan, apparently. He told the official, essentially, you sound more like a priest than a scientist, accusing them of trying to enforce a dogma, a set of unquestionable beliefs, rather than encouraging open inquiry based on evidence. He fundamentally saw blocking the question as anti-scientific.
Good for him, standing up for the principle of investigation.
And fortunately, as we've seen in recent years, the overall institutional climate has started to shift dramatically in some ways, which kind of vindicates his position.
How so? What's the evidence of that shift?
The most concrete evidence is political and legislative. The bipartisan UAP Disclosure Act, UAPDA, championed by figures like Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, a Democrat, and influential Republicans like Senator Mike Rounds. This wasn't some fringe resolution. It was a detailed 60-page piece of legislation embedded within the National Defense Authorization Act.
Right, the defense budget bill. That gives it serious weight.
Huge weight. And the language in that bill is unprecedented. It talks openly about the need for transparency regarding non-human intelligence, potential reverse engineering programs hidden within government or contractor entities. When the leaders of both major U.S. political parties are putting that kind of language into law, it signals a massive shift. The topic is no longer confined to the fringes. It's being treated as a legitimate national security and scientific issue at the highest levels.
So the political reality is starting to catch up with the evidence that people like Nolan have been pointing to?
It seems that way, although the pushback hasn't entirely disappeared, even for him.
Oh, what happened?
He revealed relatively recently that he received a phone call, someone representing the White House suggesting he should just shut up about certain specific details he had been discussing publicly regarding the phenomenon or related programs.
Seriously, a call effectively from the White House telling him to be quiet, even now with the UAPDA.
That's what he reported. It suggests that even as there's a move towards more transparency legislatively, there are still powerful forces attempting to control the narrative and maintain secrecy around certain aspects of this. The pressure is still very real. #tag outro.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize this for you, the listener. What does this all mean? We follow the journey of Dr. Gary Nolan, a verifiable, top-tier scientist in immunology and biotech, someone who builds tools to see the fundamental units of life.
And we saw how his unique expertise, initially used to debunk the Atacama mummy, ironically made him the go-to person for the intelligence community when they faced unexplained medical injuries among their personnel.
Right, and his work helped distinguish the real threat of Havana syndrome, likely microwave weapons, from a smaller, persistent set of cases linked to UAP proximity, which showed different physical effects like arrhythmias and strange scarring.
And then there's the material evidence. Analyzing samples like the Ubatuba silicon with its industrial purity from the 50s and those bizarre non-terrestrial isotope ratios.
And the Council Bluffs metal, terrestrially sourced but inexplicably, incompletely mixed after being dropped from the sky. These physical artifacts, analyzed with cutting-edge science, point towards something deeply anomalous.
Leading him to that provisional but profound conclusion. Based on the data, something non-human is operating here, and likely has been for a very long time. A conclusion reached despite career warnings and apparently even recent pressure to stay quiet.
We started this deep dive talking about the architecture of the brain, Nolan's work on intuition, and the basal ganglia developing that abstraction layer to handle complex decisions with sparse data based on the known physics of our world.
Right. Our brains evolved to make sense of this reality, the one governed by inertia, gravity, and the laws we understand.
So here's our final provocative thought for you to ponder. Given everything, Nolan and others have uncovered materials that seem to defy the chemistry of our solar system, objects reported to negate inertia and accelerate instantly. How is our own neurological hardware, that basal ganglia abstraction layer, actually processing this? Is it even equipped to truly grasp phenomena that seem to violate the fundamental rules upon which our perception and intuition were built? Could it be that the greatest anomaly isn't just the UAP itself, but the quiet struggle of our own consciousness trying to reconcile empirical evidence of the seemingly impossible?